Hello, all you wonderful folks out there. Welcome to the Into the Song podcast, a place where we spend some quality time with a songwriter discovering what makes their song tick. I'm Doug Harsh, your faithful host. Please join me as we go into the song. On today's podcast, I interview my friend Chris, who goes by the musical nom de guerre of Ben Park Sounds. Chris, who had been an often seen face around our beloved Michiana music scene, left our green pastures to head down to Nashville for some music schooling at Belmont College. Home for a break, we sat down to talk about his songwriting process and other things like how a percussionist approaches the word pandemic. Chris is a highly talented songwriter, and I know you'll enjoy his insights on a topic that we all love. Now, let's get into the song. Well, for everybody who's listening to this podcast, I just want to start out with the fact that, I've talked to Chris for quite a while and realized that we didn't have record on. So, rookie mistake. It's the fourth time that I've interviewed somebody. I'm not going to use that as an excuse, but at least you all know now. So, hey, Chris, so good to have you with me today. And so glad you said yes to the invitation to talk about your song.
I'm very honored that you asked me. Thank you so much. It's definitely a privilege. I don't get to do interviews often. And it's also great to talk to a good friend, too.
Yeah, it seems like forever since I've talked to you. And I was thinking back of when I first met you. I think the first time I saw you was playing up at the Acorn up in Three Oaks. But the first time I probably talked to you was at Sights and Sounds, the summer concert series here in South Bend.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, and after I've known you for a couple of years, I guess, you told me, hey, I'm going down to Nashville to go to school at Belmont. And I thought that was fantastic. And that's definitely had to have some impact on your life, and especially your songwriting.
So I didn't grow up with any relatives in the music industry or in the local music scene. So when I started out, I was very much teaching myself, how to navigate. But then when I moved to Nashville, that was a huge leap for someone who is teaching himself how to advertise himself and make connections with other musicians and other industry figures, etc. That was a huge leap, moving to Nashville.
That's great. And I know that a lot of people probably don't know this, but you play guitar and write songs, but I think you started out as a percussionist, right?
Yep. I started out in 6th grade and at Upton Middle School in St. Joe, their concert band.
And I hear that when you play too. I definitely hear it in your guitar playing that here's a guy who understands rhythm and how to make that work for him. And I'm wondering if, when you write songs, does your background as a percussionist come into play?
So I was a percussionist before I picked up guitar, before I even started songwriting. And when it comes to rhythm, I try to make sure, not only do I try to come up with interesting rhythms for the verses, so the rhythm in verse 2 is different from verse 1. The rhythm in the final chorus might be slightly different because of the melodic pitch contour that's going on there. But I believe more importantly, the right syllables have to fit the right rhythmic note values. So, for example, let's say a word like pandemic. So how I've envisioned pandemic is a pickup eighth note with 2 following eighth notes on the downbeat. And I wouldn't put it as an eighth note and 2 16th notes. So for example, da 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 da, pandemic, 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 pandemic. That can get tiring. That could twist the tongue. Or even da 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 da, pandemic, pandemic, pandemic. The right syllables have to fit the right rhythmic note values. I cannot stress that enough. I've heard so many songs. The lyrics are great, melodies are great, but then the rhythm just makes the syllables sound very awkward. And the note values, it's important for the note values, sorry, to imitate the syllabic stresses you would put on certain syllables and words in an actual conversation. That's just my take.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think sometimes people, their songs struggle because they're not making sure that the natural stresses within words, the syllable that's stressed falls on a beat that normally is stressed. So if you're playing in rock, you have downbeats which have meanings, right? And so if the
Yeah.
first word of your line falls on the downbeat, then it probably should have an accent there, right? I mean, the stress
Yes.
should be there. If you're playing against the backbeat, your stresses should probably be there as well. So I think that's pretty smart of you to kind of think that way, and probably pretty natural for somebody who understands, percussion.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and it's funny that as I was listening to your song, I was thinking, man, Chris writes about what he knows, and I was thinking about that line that you had in there in your song, which is fantastic, by the way. I love
Thank
it.
you.
And you have this line. I was in school. They were paying rent, ticking at our own metronomes. And I was like, there's a guy who spent some time in a practice room.
Man, taking out you got me there with the metronome line. There we go.
So yeah, and like it totally speaks to who you are, and I love that. And I think often folks try so hard to kind of um, go somewhere else with their writing, and it's not often informed by what they know as it should be, if that makes sense.
Mm,
You
I
know,
agree with you.
and that's what brings. I mean, when we listen to people we love, who we think that are great, all of their songs are informed by their understanding of the world and how they look at it, right? And so when
Yeah.
you say ticking at our own metronome, somebody's going to look at that and go, "Oh, that's awesome. I never thought about it that way, but that's a brilliant way to kind of think about what's going on." And in the song, you're writing about you and some of your friends, and they're musicians, and so that makes a lot of sense. So I'm wondering, as as I'm reading through this and listening to it, what kind of was the genesis for this song? What was the kind of key thing, idea or moment or whatever that kind of led you to kind of say, I think I'm going to write a song here, and here's what it's about?
So before I moved to Nashville, uh, I got into this uh, unhealthy state of competition and comparison, and it took me longer than it should have to realize that it's okay to go at my own pace. It's okay that I've been here. I moved to Nashville 3 years ago and have not as and have not made as much progress as someone who moved to Nashville 3 months ago and got on live TV instantly or got signed to a record label a little sooner. Like time isn't important. It's it's okay to go at my own pace, especially since I do have other things going on in my life right now that I don't want to discuss here. But it's okay. It really is. And that's why the first stanza is so important because it's like, I see this friend who, and this is actually inspired by a true event. I saw one of my co-writers. She was playing a song to promote her album, which unfortunately I didn't get to co-write on. And I remembered when we co-wrote a song a few years ago, and so I put a little twist on that, where she was singing a song that we did co-write, and but it was from a few years ago, and she was playing it now, you know, in the present of that verse.
Yeah, I love that idea
Yeah,
that it's okay to kind of understand your own speed to things. That applies to all of life because I think that so many folks feel the pressure that they have to be whatever, they have to be something whatever they have in their mind or they feel pressured to be, and being takes time, right? So
Absolutely.
so it's not wrong for a person to kind of say, I want to be a great songwriter, and I want to be successful with my music, and I'm going to make sure that I kind of take the time to do it right. And that this is something that we all need to tell each other as musicians and writers is like, my way is not your way.
Exactly.
You
It
know what I
takes
mean?
patience.
You
It
know what I
takes
mean?
time. Yeah.
It's like if I approached my if I approach songwriting exactly the way Chris does, that's not right. I have to approach it the way that Doug does. I mean, you might inform what I do. You might say like, "Hey, have you ever thought about, using this rhyming tool or whatever?" That might be
Yeah.
helpful, and that's the kind of community we want to promote. But because Chris gets a Ben Park Sounds song on a TV show, that doesn't mean that everybody else in our community is a failure.
Mm,
That means our community is winning, you know?
I agree.
And so, um, and I think that, not just within our context, but also in almost every other context of life, there's always that, the social medias have all even added to the pressure in the sense that we see
Mm,
everybody's best foot forward, right? And we think,
yeah.
oh my gosh, look what they're doing. And there's even what's the acronym for that, like where you're missing out or something.
Uh, FOMO. FOMO
FOMO,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
You bring up such a great point. There's just so much behind a song that's less than 3 minutes. So yeah.
so tell me about the structure of the song. When I look at the way that you've written it out for me, the way you have it on your SoundCloud, which I'll be linking to for everybody to listen and read the lyrics as they do, you
Yeah.
have verse, pre-chorus, and chorus. How did you kind of come to that structure? Was that intentional, or did you kind of feel like you wanted to kind of evolve things a certain way as you went?
So I ended up writing the lyrics first before I put it to music. So so I have two ways. Either create, you know, create like a melody on the guitar or the piano or on the drums even, and then put lyrics to it later, or write the words first, then put music to it to elevate it. I'd say the latter is the one I've been going to more often. Uh, so they were just words, and then I realized, hey, this part actually gets straight to the point. And um, so once I had enough lyrics written out, which was actually just verse, pre-chorus, chorus at the time, I picked up my guitar, came up with some sort of melody, adjusted some of the syllables, adjusted the rhythm, did some micromanaging, and then went to verse two. I left a bridge out. I just think not really there wasn't much else to add after the second chorus. Like the pre-chorus and chorus wrap it up very well.
And you're saying that most often lately you find that you're writing lyrics first and then
Yep.
putting it to music. That's awesome.
These days, especially with the unfinished stuff I'm writing right now, I'm focusing on the lyrics first because I really want to get to the message. I want like coming up with a musical part is fine. I'd rather have the music complement the lyrics, the words, my intentions, etc. Sometimes starting with an idea helps. Like even if you don't have actual words written out, just like writing out an idea for what you want the song to be about can definitely help. One tip that I picked up from one of my friends in Nashville is to just come up with a list of different ideas of songs you want to write. Just going with the flow can only do so much. Sometimes you kind of have to put a little more effort into cranking out ideas and creativity. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on that.
Dude, I think that's fantastic, and that's probably a good place to kind of end our talk for today. Again, thank you so much for taking the time to do this, and I think you have a lot of are really cool things to share. I think a lot of folks are going to dig hearing what you have to say. So thanks again, man.
Thank you.